The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine gardens of New Geneva, where the Terran embassy to the Galactic Council stood like a monument to 15 millennia of peaceful cooperation. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the memorial grove, her fingers trailing along the smooth bark of trees planted to commemorate each century of galactic harmony. Today marked the 15,000th anniversary of the Great Peace Accord, yet something felt different in the air. Elena paused at the central monument, a crystalline structure that held the original peace treaty signed between humanity and the 47 founding species of the Galactic Council. The inscription, written in the universal script, read, "Let no species raise arms against another, for in unity we find strength, in diversity we find wisdom." She had read these words thousands of times, but today they seemed hollow. Her personal communicator chimed softly. "Ambassador, urgent message from Earth Central Command." Her aide's voice trembled slightly. Elena frowned. Marcus had worked with her for 12 years and never showed such emotion. "Patch it through immediately," she commanded, activating her secure holo display. The face of Admiral Sarah Chun materialized before her, the background showing the war room of Earth's primary command center. Elena's stomach dropped. The war room had been ceremonial for over 10,000 years, used only for historical tours and academic research. "Elena, we have a situation. Multiple reports are coming in from our outer colonies. The Council's Enforcement Division has been taking our children." Admiral Chen's voice cracked on the last words. "Taking children? That's impossible. The protection protocols have been suspended under Emergency Provision 7741 Delta. The Council claims humanity has violated the genetic enhancement prohibition." Admiral Chen's image flickered as she transmitted data files. "Elena, they're calling our children evolutionary threats to galactic stability." Elena's hands shook as she opened the transmitted files. Video feeds from 17 different human colonies showed the same horrifying scene repeated again and again. Sleek Council ships descended from cloudy skies while their energy shields deflected desperate human weapons fire. Council troops, a mix of the insectoid Vorthak and the crystalline Zenhari, marched through human settlements with clinical precision. But it wasn't conquest they sought. Elena watched in horror as Council forces ignored adults entirely, moving directly to schools, playgrounds, and homes where children lived. The troops carried specialized containment fields that could hold a struggling child without harm while preventing any rescue attempt. On Kepler 442b, she watched a human mother throw herself at a Vorthak soldier as it carried away her 6-year-old daughter. The alien's secondary arms simply pushed the woman aside without breaking stride. The child's screams echoed through the transmission until the containment field activated its silence dampeners. "How many colonies?" Elena whispered. 37 so far. They started with the outer rim settlements 12 hours ago and are working their way toward the core worlds. "Elena, they have over 8,000 human children in custody." The ambassador's legs gave out, and she sank onto a nearby bench. 8,000 children. In her mind, she could see their faces, hear their cries for parents who couldn't reach them. For 15,000 years, humanity had lived in peace with their galactic neighbors. Human children played alongside young Altarians, learned mathematics from Keruvian teachers, and shared toys with Draxian younglings. The idea of species-based kidnapping was not just criminal, it was unthinkable. What violation are they claiming? Elena forced herself to ask. Admiral Chen's expression grew even grimmer. Genetic enhancement beyond approved parameters. They're saying human children born in the last 50 years show dangerous evolutionary adaptations that pose a threat to galactic stability. Elena's blood ran cold. She knew exactly what the Council had discovered, and the implications terrified her. "Admiral, I need immediate transport to the Council chambers. And, Sarah, start quiet preparations. If this goes the way I think it might, we'll need every ship we have." "Elena, what aren't you telling me?" The ambassador looked up at the Peace Monument, its crystalline surface reflecting the afternoon sun like scattered diamonds. In 6 hours, she would stand before the Council and learn whether 15 millennia of peace would continue or whether humanity would face something they hadn't confronted since the ancient wars of the pre-space era. "The children they're taking," Elena said quietly, "they're not wrong about the genetic changes. But they don't understand what they're dealing with." "Sarah, human children aren't just evolving. They're evolving in response to something the Council did to us 15,000 years ago. The connection ended, leaving Elena alone in the memorial grove. She walked to her transport, her mind racing through the implications of what she knew and what the Council was about to learn. The peace hadn't ended when the Council took human children. It had ended the moment humanity discovered why their children were changing. The flight to the Council chambers took 2 hours, during which Elena reviewed classified files that had been sealed for over a century. Project Heritage, the secret study of human genetic drift since joining the Galactic community, painted a picture that would shock the Council to its core. Human children weren't evolving randomly. They were developing specific adaptations, enhanced pattern recognition, improved spatial reasoning, resistance to certain types of energy manipulation, and, most disturbing of all, apparent immunity to the psychic influence techniques used by several Council species for peaceful conflict resolution. Elena remembered the words of Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the xenobiologist who had discovered the truth. We've been living in a carefully managed zoo for 15,000 years. The Council species have been subtly influencing human development through everything from food additives to atmosphere processors. Our children's evolution isn't natural adaptation. It's their immune system fighting back. The Council chambers appeared ahead, a massive structure built into an asteroid between Earth and Mars. The sight that greeted Elena as her transport docked made her heart sink further. Hundreds of Council ships filled the surrounding space, their formation suggesting military readiness rather than diplomatic gathering. Elena walked through corridors she had traversed countless times, but today they felt different. Council personnel who usually greeted her with warm familiarity now watched her with suspicious eyes. Vorthack guards, who had always seemed like exotic decorations, suddenly appeared threatening with their razor-sharp mandibles and compound eyes that missed nothing. The main Council chamber buzzed with activity as representatives from over 300 species took their places. Elena noticed that humanity's traditional allies, the peaceful Altarians, the scholarly Keruvians, and the artistic Draxians, sat in sections reserved for observers rather than voting members. Supreme Counselor Zethkar, an ancient crystalline whose body contained the accumulated wisdom of a species, activated the chamber's amplification systems. His voice resonated through crystalline formations throughout the room, translating automatically into every known language. We gather today to address a threat to galactic stability that requires immediate action. The species known as humanity has violated the genetic enhancement prohibition through unauthorized evolutionary manipulation of their offspring. Elena stood, her voice carrying the authority of her office. Counselor Zethkar, humanity has conducted no genetic enhancement programs. Our children's development is natural evolution. A ripple of what Elena interpreted as alien laughter passed through sections of the chamber. Counselor Vextai of the Vorthack species clicked its mandibles in a gesture Elena had learned indicated condescension. Ambassador Vasquez, your species' claims of ignorance are noted, but irrelevant. Observe. The main display activated, showing detailed genetic analyses of human children taken from the sea's colonies. Elena's breath caught as she saw the data. The evolutionary changes were more dramatic than even the classified files had indicated. Human children showed cellular modifications that shouldn't be possible without direct genetic manipulation, neural development patterns that exceeded baseline human parameters by significant margins, and, most shocking of all, quantum entanglement markers that suggested developing telepathic abilities. These modifications, Counselor Zethkar continued, represent clear violations of the genetic enhancement prohibition. But more concerning is their apparent purpose. These children are developing capabilities that directly counter the peaceful influence techniques that have maintained galactic harmony for 15 millennia. Elena felt the trap closing around humanity. And what action does the Council propose? Immediate custody of all enhanced human children for proper education and psychological adjustment. The children will be raised by appropriate Council species to ensure they develop into productive galactic citizens without their dangerous capabilities. The chamber fell silent. Elena stood in the center of the vast room, surrounded by hundreds of alien species who had just announced their intention to steal every human child born in the last 50 years. The peace that had lasted 15,000 years hadn't just ended. It had been revealed as an elaborate lie designed to keep humanity compliant. Counselor, Elena said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. Humanity refuses this proposal. The proposal, Vextai clicked, was not a request. The Enforcement Division has already secured 8,247 human juveniles. Collection operations will continue until all enhanced children are in protective custody. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the children crying for their parents in council detention facilities. When she opened them again, her expression had hardened into something the galaxy hadn't seen from a human representative in 15,000 years. Then, you have declared war on humanity. The chamber erupted in alien voices as species throughout the room reacted with shock, confusion, and in some cases, what Elena interpreted as excitement. Counselor Zethkar's crystalline form pulsed with orange light, indicating extreme agitation. Ambassador, humanity has no military capability. Your species chose peace 15,000 years ago and has maintained only token defensive forces since joining the council. Elena smiled, and something in that expression made several nearby aliens unconsciously move away from her position. Counselor, you misunderstand the nature of human peace. We didn't abandon our military capabilities when we joined the council. We simply put them away. She paused, letting her words sink in throughout the chamber. You have just given us reason to take them out again. Your threats are meaningless, Vextai screeched. The combined council fleet numbers over 2 million vessels. Humanity has perhaps 1,000 ships scattered across your colonies. You're correct, Elena agreed. We do have approximately 1,000 visible ships. Her smile grew wider. Would you like to know how many invisible ones we have? The chamber fell silent again as the implications of her words settled over the assembled aliens. Elena activated her personal communicator, broadcasting on all frequencies. Admiral Chun, Operation Heritage is authorized. Release the locks. The response came not from her communicator, but from the chamber's own sensor systems. Alerts began sounding throughout the facility as the passive sensors detected massive energy signatures appearing throughout the asteroid field around them. Elena looked up at the main display as it automatically switched to external viewing. The space around the council chambers, which had been empty except for the visible council fleet, now swarmed with human vessels of designs no galactic species had ever seen. Ships that seemed to bend light around their hulls, others that appeared to phase in and out of normal space, and some that registered on sensors only as empty space until they began moving. For 15,000 years, Elena announced to the stunned chamber, humanity has been preparing for the day our children would need protection. You have just made this that day. The council had started a war they thought would last hours. They had no idea they had just awakened something that had been quietly preparing for this moment since the day the first human child was born under alien skies. In the detention facilities throughout council space, human children stopped crying and began to smile. Their enhanced senses could feel something their captors could not, the approach of ships carrying parents who would do anything to bring them home. The age of galactic peace was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center of the HSS Retribution, humanity's first stealth dreadnought, watching displays that showed the galaxy's reaction to humanity's revelation. 6 hours since Ambassador Vasquez had spoken those fateful words in the council chambers, alien military commanders across known space had been frantically trying to understand what they faced. The bridge around her hummed with activity as officers coordinated movements of ships that had remained hidden for millennia. Captain Marcus Torres, her tactical officer, approached with a grim expression. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 council species already. Apparently, our demonstration at the council chambers has convinced them that resistance is futile. Sarah almost smiled. Almost. But the faces of 8,000 human children in alien custody kept the expression from forming. Denied. All surrender requests are denied until every human child is returned to their families. Yes, ma'am. Admiral, we're also receiving communications from the Altarian Confederation, Caruvian Republic, and Draxian Commonwealth. They're requesting immediate meetings to discuss, and I quote, separation from the Galactic Council for the purpose of maintaining neutrality in the coming conflict. That did bring a thin smile to Sarah's lips. Humanity's traditional allies had read the situation correctly and were distancing themselves from the council before the real fighting began. Smart. Grant those meetings, but Make it clear we consider them neutral parties only as long as they remain truly neutral. If any of their ships aid the Council in any way, they become legitimate targets. The main display activated with an incoming transmission from Earth. President Maria Santos appeared, her usually calm demeanor strained with barely controlled emotion. Sarah, give me a status report. Madam President, Fleet Group Alpha has secured the space around the Council chambers. Fleet Groups Beta through Zeta are moving toward the primary detention facilities where our children are being held. Estimated time to initial rescue operations, 14 hours. Casualties? None yet. The Council species are still in shock. I don't think they understand what they're looking at. President Santos nodded grimly. Sarah, I've just finished reviewing the heritage files. All of them. She paused, her expression growing darker. Do you understand what the Council has been doing to us? Sarah felt cold despite the regulated temperature of the bridge. She had read portions of the classified files, but access to the complete heritage archives was restricted to only a handful of people in human space. Madam President, my clearance level doesn't. Your clearance just got upgraded. Captain Torres, clear the bridge except for essential personnel. As the bridge crew filtered out, leaving only Sarah and her most trusted officers, President Santos began transmitting data that would change everything. The Council didn't just manage human development. Sarah, they engineered it. 15,000 years ago, when humanity joined the galactic community, we weren't given a choice about peace. We were chemically and psychologically conditioned to accept it. The files that appeared on Sarah's personal display made her stomach clench. Atmosphere processors that introduced neurochemical agents designed to reduce human aggression. Food additives that enhanced compliance and reduced critical thinking. Most horrifying of all, targeted virus releases that altered human brain chemistry to make the species more accepting of authority. They turned us into domesticated animals, Sarah whispered. Worse than that, they made us forget we had ever been anything else. Sarah, do you know why our children are developing these enhanced capabilities? Sarah studied the genetic data streaming across her display. The patterns were becoming clear, the enhanced pattern recognition, the resistance to psychic manipulation, the developing telepathic abilities. Their bodies are rejecting the conditioning. The newer generations are naturally developing immunities to everything the Council has been doing to us. Exactly. Our children aren't evolving, Sarah. They're returning to what humans were supposed to be. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. For 15,000 years, humanity had lived as a shadow of its former self, chemically pacified and psychologically manipulated into believing they were naturally peaceful. The children the Council had taken weren't dangerous evolutionary threats. They were the first truly free humans born in millennia. Madam President, what were humans like before the conditioning? President Santos' expression grew cold. Read the pre-contact archives, Admiral. Read them all. And, Sarah, when you're done, you'll understand why the Council is about to learn exactly what they've awakened. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with data files that painted a picture of humanity she had never imagined. Pre-contact humans had been a species defined by curiosity, innovation, and an almost pathological refusal to accept limitations. They had been warriors, explorers, inventors, and dreamers who had clawed their way from a single planet to the edge of galactic space through sheer determination and creative violence. The conditioning had suppressed all of that, turning humanity into compliant citizens who accepted their place in the galactic order without question. But the conditioning was failing, and with each generation, more of humanity's original nature was returning. Captain Torres, Sarah called, and her tactical officer immediately returned to the bridge. Yes, Admiral. Signal all fleet commanders. Operation Heritage moves to Phase 2. Active engagement is authorized. Ma'am, are we dropping the stealth? Sarah looked at the tactical display, showing Council forces frantically repositioning to defend their detention facilities. 2 million ships, the largest military force in galactic history, preparing to fight an enemy they couldn't see coming. No, Captain, we're dropping the pretense. The HSS Retribution shimmered out of stealth mode, its massive bulk appearing in the space near Vorthak Prime, where one of the largest detention facilities held over 2,000 human children. Around it, hundreds of other human vessels materialized from nothing, their exotic hull designs unlike anything in the galactic database. Supreme Admiral Krixtal of the Vorthak fleet stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet of 300 vessels had been guarding the detention facility for 6 hours, during which their sensors had detected nothing unusual in the surrounding space. Now he faced a human force that outnumbered his ships 2 to 1, appearing from empty vacuum, as if they had simply willed themselves into existence. Communications, open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered, his mandibles clicking nervously. The face that appeared on his main display was unlike any human he had encountered during the peace. Admiral Chin's expression held none of the compliance and deference he associated with the species. Instead, her eyes burned with something that made his warrior instincts scream warnings. "Supreme Admiral Krixtal," she said, her voice carrying an edge that reminded him of predatory species from his homeworld's ancient past. "You are holding 2,047 human children in your detention facility. You will release them immediately." "Admiral Chun, the children are in protective custody under Council authority." "I cannot. You misunderstand, Admiral. That was not a request." The display split to show weapon systems activating throughout the human fleet. "You have 60 seconds to begin transport operations, or we will come and get our children ourselves." Krixtal's tactical officer, a younger Vorthak named Vex Sin, approached with visible agitation. "Supreme Admiral, our sensors are detecting energy signatures consistent with mass conversion weapons." "If those are what I think they are, what are mass conversion weapons?" Krixtal demanded. "Theoretical weapons that convert matter directly into energy without fusion or fission reactions. The power output would be..." "Supreme Admiral, a single mass conversion torpedo could destroy our entire fleet." On the display, Admiral Chin's expression hadn't changed. 30 seconds, Admiral." Krixtal looked at his fleet, at the detention facility below, and at the impossible human ships surrounding them. In the files he had studied about humanity, there had been warnings about their pre-contact military history, but 15,000 years of peace had made those warnings seem like ancient mythology. "Transport operations. Begin immediate evacuation of all human juveniles to the flagship Vengeance," he ordered. "Admiral," Vex Sin protested, "The Council, Krixtal interrupted, "is not here facing weapons that could crack a planet in half." The transport operations began immediately. Streams of energy carrying human children from the facility to the Council flagship. Sarah watched the process on her tactical display. Her jaw clenched as she saw the faces of terrified children who had been separated from their families for almost a day. But something was wrong. The children weren't acting terrified anymore. As they materialized on the transport pads of the human ships, they were smiling. Their enhanced senses, the very capabilities that had made the Council classify them as threats, had detected something the aliens couldn't perceive. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres, "the children are showing unusual brain activity patterns. It's almost like they're communicating with each other somehow." Sarah felt a chill of recognition. The telepathic development mentioned in the genetic files wasn't theoretical, it was active. The human children had been sharing information and coordinating their responses to captivity. "What kind of communication?" "Unknown, ma'am. But, Admiral, I think they've been gathering intelligence on Council operations while in custody." The implications of that statement were staggering. The Council had taken 8,000 human children believing they were containing a genetic threat. Instead, they had unknowingly distributed thousands of potential intelligence assets throughout their most secure facilities. "Communications, connect me with detention facilities at Zenhari Prime, Corlin Station, and the Hegemony Fortress," Sarah ordered. If human children had been gathering intelligence throughout their captivity, the data they possessed could change the entire nature of the conflict. Within minutes, Sarah was coordinating the simultaneous liberation of children from facilities across Council space. Each rescue operation revealed the same pattern. Human children who had spent their captivity observing, learning, and sharing information through developing telepathic abilities their captors couldn't detect. Little Melissa Chong, age 7, had memorized the complete security protocol for the Zenhari Prime facility. 8-year-old Ahmed Hassan had observed and recorded the movements of over 200 Council ships through the viewing ports of his detention cell. 12-year-old Sarah Kim had somehow detected and mapped the quantum communication network that connected all Council military installations. The Council hadn't just kidnapped human children. They had unknowingly conducted the largest intelligence-gathering operation in human history, with the captives as unwilling but highly effective spies. Admiral, Captain Torres reported. We're receiving a priority transmission from Ambassador Vasquez at the council chambers. Elena's face appeared on the main display, her diplomatic composure replaced by grim determination. Sarah, the council has just voted to authorize full military action against humanity. They're mobilizing their entire fleet. Let them come, Elena. How many ships? 2.4 million vessels from over 300 species. They're calling it the Grand Alliance. Elena paused, her expression growing darker. Sarah, they're not just planning to fight us. They're planning to sterilize every human world to prevent the spread of what they're calling the genetic plague. Sarah felt the last restraints of 15,000 years of conditioning finally shatter. The council wasn't content to steal human children. They wanted to commit genocide against the entire species. Elena, transmit a message to every human colony, every ship, every station in our space. Operation Heritage is now Operation Vengeance. We are at war. Sarah, there are over 2 million council ships. Elena, Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying a tone that would have been impossible for a conditioned human to produce. They have no idea how many ships we really have. The Admiral turned to her tactical officer. Captain Torres, signal all hidden fleets. Drop stealth protocols. Show them everything. Would have been invisible space around the council fleet positions suddenly filled with human vessels. Not hundreds, not thousands, but hundreds of thousands of ships of designs and capabilities that should have taken millions of years to develop. Elena, Sarah said, watching the tactical displays show alien fleets realizing they were already surrounded by forces that dwarf their own. For 15,000 years, the council thought they were managing human development. They were wrong. We've been managing theirs. The war the council thought they were starting had already been won. They just didn't know it yet. Dr. Elena Morrison stood in the observation deck of Research Station Prometheus, watching human fleets maneuver through space with precision that defied everything she thought she knew about her own species. As the lead xenobiologist for the Heritage Project, she had spent decades studying the genetic changes in human children. Now, watching those same children coordinate rescue operations across the galaxy through telepathic abilities that shouldn't exist, she realized her research had barely scratched the surface. Dr. Morrison, came a voice behind her. She turned to see Director James Walsh, the man who had overseen the Heritage Project since its inception. His usual calm demeanor was strained, and she could see exhaustion in his eyes. Director, the children we've rescued are displaying abilities far beyond our projections. The telepathic range is measured in light years, not kilometers. They're not just communicating with each other. They're accessing and processing information from council databases in real time. Walsh nodded grimly. Elena, there's something you need to know about Heritage. Something we've kept classified, even from our own researchers. He activated a secure, holo display, showing files that Elena had never seen despite her decades of clearance. The Heritage Project wasn't created to study human genetic drift. It was created to document the return of human abilities that were artificially suppressed. Elena felt the world shift beneath her feet. Suppressed? Director, human telepathy is a new evolution. Our children are the first generation to develop these capabilities. No, Elena. Our children are the first generation in 15,000 years to redevelop these capabilities. The files showed archaeological evidence, pre-contact historical records, and genetic analyses that painted an entirely different picture of human history. Before contact with the Council, humanity was already developing psionic abilities. We were on the verge of becoming a telepathic species when the conditioning began. The Council didn't just suppress our aggression. They suppressed our evolution. Elena stared at brain scan after brain scan showing human neural structures that had been dormant for millennia suddenly, reactivating in children born within the last century. They crippled us. For 15,000 years, they kept us from becoming what we were meant to be. Worse than that, Walsh continued, activating new data streams. The conditioning wasn't just about suppression. It was about harvesting. The files that appeared made Elena's blood run cold. Energy extraction facilities disguised as atmospheric processors. Neural network taps hidden within communication systems. Most horrifying of all, detailed schematics showing how human psionic potential had been slowly drained away and channeled into council systems. Our psychic energy has been powering their civilization for 15,000 years, Elena whispered. Every human world, every colony, every station, all feeding into a network designed to harvest the mental energy that makes humanity unique. Elena, the Council didn't domesticate us. They farmed us. The observation deck's emergency alert system activated. Elena looked up to see Admiral Chen's face on the main display, broadcasting from the bridge of the Retribution. All personnel, this is Admiral Chen. We have located the central harvesting facility. The station designated Nexus Prime is not, as Council records indicate, a communications hub. It is the primary collection point for 15,000 years of stolen human psionic energy. Elena gripped the railing as the implications crashed over her. Every human who had lived and died under Council rule had been unknowingly contributing to a system designed to steal their species' greatest gift. Director Walsh, Admiral Chen continued, you are authorized to release the Prometheus archives to all human forces. It's time our people understood exactly what they're fighting for. The Prometheus archives contain the complete truth about human history, Council manipulation, and the gradual awakening of abilities that have been locked away for millennia. As the data transmitted throughout human space, Elena could practically feel the rage of her species igniting like a star going nova. Captain Sarah Kim, age 12 and the unofficial leader of the rescued children, appeared on a secondary display. Her young face carried an expression of wisdom that seemed impossible for someone her age. Dr. Morrison, we can feel it. All of us. There's something huge out there, something that feels like all the humans who came before us. It's calling to us. Elena's enhanced instruments detected massive psionic disturbances throughout the galaxy as the liberated children began accessing abilities that had been locked away for generations upon generations. Sarah, what do you mean it's calling to you? The energy they took from us, Dr. Morrison, it's not gone. It's been stored somewhere, and now it wants to come home. Director Walsh activated his emergency protocols, connecting to research stations throughout human space. All stations initiate deep space scanning. Look for artificial structures that match the psychic resonance patterns in the Prometheus data. The results came back within minutes, and Elena felt her world tilt again. Throughout Council space, massive stations hidden within asteroid fields and nebulae showed signatures consistent with psionic energy storage. Hundreds of them, each containing thousands of years of harvested human potential. They didn't just steal our abilities, Elena breathed. They've been stockpiling them. Admiral Chen's voice cut through her thoughts. Dr. Morrison, we need a full analysis of those storage facilities. If we can liberate the energy they've stolen, what kind of capabilities are we talking about? Elena ran rapid calculations based on the energy signatures her instruments detected. The numbers that came back made her double-check her work 3 times before she trusted them. Admiral, if my calculations are correct, the stored psionic energy represents the accumulated potential of over 500 generations of humanity. If it were released and reconnected to living humans. She paused, trying to find words for concepts that had no precedent in galactic science. We would become something the galaxy has never seen before. A truly telepathic species with capabilities that would redefine what it means to be sentient. The communication channel fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena watched displays showing human fleets moving toward the storage facilities while children throughout the rescued groups began exhibiting new abilities by the hour. Some could now perceive events happening systems away. Others displayed tactical thinking that exceeded trained military officers. A few had begun manipulating matter at the molecular level through focused thought alone. Dr. Morrison, came another voice, President Santos, broadcasting from Earth. I need you to answer a question honestly. If we liberate this stored energy, what happens to the Council species? Are we talking about humanity becoming a threat to galactic civilization? Elena considered the question carefully. The storage facilities contained enough psionic energy to fundamentally alter human capabilities, possibly to the point where they would become something entirely new. But the question of threat level depended on human nature itself. Madam President, the energy belongs to us. It was stolen from our people and used to power the civilization that enslaved us. Returning it to humanity wouldn't make us a threat. It would make us whole. And the Council species? What happens to them when we take back what's ours? Elena looked at the data, showing Council civilizations that had become dependent on human psionic energy for everything from faster-than-light communication to advanced manufacturing processes. Their civilization will collapse. Most of their advanced technology is powered by human psychic energy. Without it, they'll be forced back to pre-contact technological levels. So we're talking about dismantling their entire way of life. No, Madam President, we're talking about taking back what they stole from us. If their way of life was built on theft, then it deserves to be dismantled. President Santos nodded slowly. Dr. Morrison, you have authorization to proceed with energy liberation protocols. Bring our people home. Elena turned to Director Walsh, who is already coordinating with research teams across the galaxy. James, we're going to need every xenobiologist, every psychic researcher, every energy specialist we have. This isn't just about liberation. We're going to be managing the transformation of our entire species. Elena, Walsh said quietly, are you sure we're ready for this? Becoming something that powerful, that different, it will change everything about what it means to be human. Elena looked out at the stars, thinking about 8,000 children who had been stolen from their families simply for developing abilities that were their birthright. She thought about 500 generations of humans who had lived and died as shadows of what they could have been. She thought about parents throughout human space who would do anything to protect their children from ever being enslaved again. James, we stopped being the old kind of human the moment they took our children. The question isn't whether we're ready to change, it's whether we're willing to accept what we really are. The first storage facility fell to human forces 6 hours later. Elena watched the energy readings as centuries of stolen psionic potential flowed back toward its original source. Throughout the rescue fleets, human crews began reporting enhanced abilities, expanded awareness, and connections to their fellow humans that transcended normal space and time. But it was the children who showed the most dramatic changes. Their developing brains, already adapted to process psionic energy, became conduits for capabilities that redefined the boundaries of consciousness itself. Dr. Morrison, Captain Kim reported, her young voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there hours before. We can see them all. Every human who ever lived, every thought that was taken from our people. We could bring them back. Elena's instruments detected something impossible. Psionic signatures that matched deceased humans whose energy had been harvested over the millennia. The Council hadn't just stolen human potential. They had unknowingly preserved the essence of human consciousness across thousands of generations. Sarah, are you saying that humans who died while under Council conditioning, their minds are still intact in the storage systems? Not just intact, Dr. Morrison. They're angry. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. If the consciousness of dead humans had been preserved within the psionic storage network, their liberation would bring back not just energy, but the accumulated knowledge and fury of 500 generations who had died as slaves. The Council had thought they were stealing human potential. Instead, they had created an army of the dead that was about to return to finish what the living had started. Elena activated her emergency transmitter, broadcasting to all human forces. All ships, all personnel, prepare for contact with preserved human consciousness from the stored facilities. We're not just rescuing our children. We're bringing our ancestors home for war. Lieutenant Commander David Park stood on the bridge of the HSS Prometheus as his ship approached the massive psionic storage facility hidden within the Helix Nebula. Around him, his crew worked with an efficiency that seemed impossible until he realized they were no longer relying on verbal communication. The recovered psionic energy from the first liberated facility had begun connecting human minds across impossible distances. Commander Park, came a voice that seemed to originate inside his head rather than through the ship's communication system. It was Captain Sarah Kim, the 12-year-old who had somehow become the focal point for all rescued human children. Sarah, I can hear you, but you're 3-star systems away. How is this possible? The barriers between us are breaking down, Commander. Every facility we liberate makes us stronger, more connected. But there's something else, something the Council never understood about what they were storing. Through the new mental link, David felt rather than saw images from throughout human space. Children who had been developing telepathic abilities were now serving as bridges between living humans and something vast and patient that had been waiting in the storage networks. Commander, his science officer reported aloud, breaking the mental conversation. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the facility. It's like the entire structure is waking up. David looked at the tactical display showing the storage facility ahead. What had appeared to be a simple space station was revealing itself as something far more complex. Organic-looking structures were extending from the central hub, reaching toward his ship with obvious intent. Sarah, are you seeing this? We all are, Commander. The facility isn't just storage, it's a prison. And the prisoners want out. The main display activated, showing the interior of the facility as human boarding teams made their way through corridors that defied conventional physics. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with energy, and crew members reported hearing voices that spoke in languages that hadn't been used for millennia. Dr. Elena Morrison's voice cut through the mental chatter as she reported from the facility's central chamber. Commander, you need to see this. The storage system isn't just containing energy, it's containing active human consciousness from across 15,000 years of conditioning. The display showed Elena standing before massive crystalline structures that contained swirling energy patterns. As David watched, faces began to appear within the energy. Humans from different eras, different worlds, all bearing expressions of fury that had been building for centuries. Dr. Morrison, are you saying the Council accidentally preserved the minds of every human whose psionic energy they harvested? Not accidentally, Commander. The consciousness is integral to the psionic energy itself. They couldn't steal one without taking the other. David, we're looking at the preserved minds of over 30 billion humans who died under Council conditioning. The implications hit David like a physical blow. 30 billion human minds, all aware of their imprisonment, all carrying the knowledge and experiences of 15,000 years of slavery. The Council hadn't just stolen human potential. They had created the largest repository of human consciousness in galactic history. Dr. Morrison, if we liberate these minds, what happens? Can they return? Unknown, Commander. But they're already trying to communicate with us. The ship's systems suddenly came alive with data that wasn't being transmitted through normal channels. Information flowed directly into the minds of the human crew, showing them images of Council worlds, military formations, and technological capabilities that no living human should have been able to access. Commander Park came a new voice, ancient, wise, and carrying an undertone of rage that made his bones ache. I am Marcus Chun, Admiral of the 3rd Colonial Fleet. I died in 2847, Standard Calendar, when the Council introduced neurochemical agents into our atmosphere processors. David felt the presence of a man who had been dead for over 12,000 years, speaking directly into his consciousness. Admiral Chun, how is this possible? The same psionic energy that allows human telepathy preserves consciousness after death, Commander. The Council has been unknowingly collecting human souls for 15 millennia. The presence grew stronger, more focused. We have been watching, learning, waiting for the moment when our descendants will be strong enough to free us. Admiral, what do you need from us? Liberation, Commander. Return our energy to living humans so we can rejoin the fight for our species' freedom. We have 15,000 years of intelligence on Council operations and 30 billion minds ready for war. Through the mental link, David felt the combined knowledge of dead generations flowing into his consciousness. Military strategies from Admiral Chin's era, technological innovations from scientists who had died millennia ago, diplomatic intelligence from ambassadors who had spent lifetimes observing alien psychology. Dr. Morrison, begin liberation protocols immediately. Admiral Chun, can you coordinate with the other preserved minds? Already done, Commander. We have organized ourselves into functional units over the millennia. Military commanders from every era, scientists who developed technologies the Council suppressed, engineers who understood systems the living have forgotten. The liberation process began with energy discharges that lit up the entire nebula. As the stored psionic power flowed back toward human space, David felt his own consciousness expanding beyond anything he had thought possible. He could sense every human ship in the galaxy, feel the thoughts and emotions of his entire species, and access knowledge that spanned 15,000 years of suppressed human development. But more than that, he could feel the presence of the dead returning to fight alongside the living. Commander, his tactical officer reported, her voice carrying new harmonics that suggested enhanced neural processing. The Council fleet is responding to our operations. 200,000 ships are moving toward our position. David smiled, feeling the battle wisdom of ancient admirals merging with his own tactical knowledge. Number of ships approaching? 237,412 vessels, organized into 47 fleet groups using standard council formation patterns that were developed 8,000 years ago and have remained unchanged since implementation. The specificity of the information came not from his censors, but from the preserved minds of human intelligence officers who had observed council military doctrine for centuries. Admiral Chun, can you provide tactical analysis? Gladly, Commander. Council fleets rely on overwhelming numbers and energy superiority, but their formations are predictable and they have never adapted to face an opponent with psionic capabilities. We have battle plans developed over 12 millennia of observation. Through the mental link, David felt tactical information flowing from dozens of long-dead military commanders directly to every human ship in the area. Strategies that incorporated abilities the living humans were only just developing. Weapon systems that could be enhanced through focused psionic energy, and coordination protocols that would allow human fleets to act as a single vast organism. All ships, this is Commander Park. You are receiving tactical data from preserved human consciousness. Trust it. These minds have been studying our enemies longer than our civilization has existed. The Council fleet arrived expecting to face desperate human forces fighting to steal alien technology. Instead, they found themselves confronting an enemy that knew their every tactical doctrine, could predict their every move, and possessed capabilities that 15,000 years of intelligence gathering had failed to detect. The battle lasted 4 hours and resulted in the complete destruction of the Council force without the loss of a single human ship. Commander, Dr. Morrison reported as the liberation process completed, we have confirmed contact with preserved human consciousness from all 15,000 years of Council conditioning. The stored knowledge includes everything from suppressed technological innovations to detailed intelligence on every Council species. Dr. Morrison, what's our next move? The preserved minds are requesting immediate contact with human military command. Admiral Chun and his contemporaries want to coordinate with Admiral Sarah Chun. Apparently, they're related. David felt a moment of cosmic irony. The Council's attempt to steal human potential had preserved the consciousness of Admiral Sarah Chun's ancestor, who had spent 12,000 years planning the liberation of his descendant. Patch me through to Admiral Chun on the retribution. David, came Admiral Chun's voice, carrying new undertones of enhanced psionic ability. I'm already connected. And David, I've been having the most interesting conversation with my great-great-great-grandfather. Apparently, the family tradition of refusing to surrender runs deeper than I thought. The mental link expanded, connecting David to a conversation that spanned both the living and the dead. Admiral Marcus Chen's preserved consciousness merged its 12,000-year perspective with Admiral Sarah Chen's modern tactical knowledge, creating a synthesis of military experience that no enemy could match. Sarah, the ancient admiral's voice echoed through the connection, show them what happens when you steal from humanity and think you can get away with it. Grandfather, Admiral Chen replied, using a term that encompassed hundreds of generations. It would be my honor. David watched the tactical displays as human fleets throughout the galaxy began moving with coordination that seemed impossible until he realized they were being directed by the combined consciousness of 30 billion preserved human minds, each contributing their knowledge and experience to a species that was no longer bound by the limitations of individual mortality. The Council had intended to domesticate humanity by stealing their potential. Instead, they had created an immortal enemy that carried the accumulated knowledge and fury of 15,000 years of slavery. Commander Park, came Captain Kim's voice, now harmonizing with hundreds of preserved children who had died under Council conditioning. The liberation of the storage facilities is nearly complete. Every human who ever lived under their control is now available to fight for our freedom. David felt the vast network of human consciousness settling into its new reality. The living and the dead working together, sharing knowledge across centuries, combining their unique perspectives into a force that would reshape the galaxy. The war had begun with the theft of 8,000 children. It would end with the resurrection of 30 billion ancestors who had been waiting 15,000 years for the chance to come home. 1 year after the liberation of the human children, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood once again in the Memorial Grove of New Geneva. But everything had changed. The crystalline monument to 15,000 years of galactic peace lay shattered, replaced by a new structure built from materials that seemed to shift between dimensions. a gift from preserved human consciousness that had learned to manipulate reality at the quantum level during their imprisonment. Around her, the garden itself had been transformed. Trees that had commemorated centuries of peaceful coexistence now grew in patterns that followed psionic energy, flows visible only to enhanced human perception. Children played among the plants, their laughter carrying harmonics that resonated across star systems where their friends heard and responded in kind. Elena herself was different. The liberation of 30 billion preserved human minds had awakened abilities in every living human, connecting them to a network of consciousness that spanned the entirety of their species' experience. She could feel the thoughts of humans on distant worlds, sense the emotions of children who had been strangers to her a year ago, and access the wisdom of ancestors who had been dust for millennia. Elena came a familiar voice, and she turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen approaching. But it wasn't just the Admiral. Elena could sense the presence of Admiral Marcus Chun and dozens of other preserved military minds that had merged their experience with the living commander. Sarah, how are our former enemies adapting to the new order? Admiral Chen's expression carried the weight of tactical knowledge accumulated over 15,000 years. Better than expected, worse than we hoped. 312 council species have formally surrendered and requested protectorate status under human administration. 47 have chosen exile to the Galactic Rim rather than submit to our authority. And 12 species have attempted to develop resistance movements. Elena nodded, feeling the complex emotions of preserved human consciousness that had watched their enslavers struggle with the collapse of their civilization. There was satisfaction in the justice, but also something approaching pity for species that had become dependent on stolen human abilities. What about the attempted resistance movements? Handled by the children, Admiral Chun replied with a slight smile. Elena, 12-year-old Sarah Kim, can predict council tactical movements 3 weeks in advance. The resistance movements surrendered before they finished planning their first operations. Through the mental link that now connected all humanity, Elena felt the touch of Captain Kim's consciousness. The child had become something far beyond her years, serving as a focal point for the enhanced abilities of her generation while maintaining the innocence and wonder that made her uniquely human. Ambassador Vasquez came Sarah's mental voice, carrying undertones of vast computational power. The Vorthack delegation is requesting another meeting about reconstruction aid for their homeworld. Elena accessed the relevant information from the vast repository of human consciousness. The Vorthack had been one of the primary species responsible for operating detention facilities where human children had been imprisoned. Their homeworld's infrastructure had depended entirely on psionic energy extraction from human sources and had collapsed completely when that power was reclaimed. Sarah, what's your assessment of their request? They're genuinely remorseful, and their suffering is real. But Grandmother Chun thinks we should make them work harder for forgiveness. Elena felt the presence of Admiral Marcus Chen's preserved consciousness weighing in on the decision. The ancient admiral had spent 12,000 years watching council species exploit human potential, and his perspective on mercy was complicated by millennia of justified anger. Grandmother Chun, Elena addressed the preserved consciousness directly. Your thoughts on reconstruction aid? They imprisoned our children, Elena. They built their civilization on stolen human souls. If they want our help rebuilding what they destroyed through their own greed, they should be prepared to earn it. And how would you suggest they earn it? Service. Let them spend the next century working to undo the damage they caused. Let them help us locate and liberate any remaining human consciousness trapped in their systems. Let them prove that their remorse is genuine through action rather than words. Elena considered the wisdom of a man who had been dead for 12 millennia, but whose consciousness had observed the council species longer than many civilizations had existed. Around her, she felt the agreement of thousands of other preserved minds who had reached similar conclusions through their own experiences. Sarah, transmit our response to the Vorthack delegation. We'll provide emergency humanitarian aid to prevent starvation and disease, but full reconstruction assistance requires a commitment to a century of service in human space, helping to locate and restore any remaining trapped consciousness. Already done, Ambassador. They've agreed to the terms. Elena smiled at the efficiency of communication that occurred at the speed of thought. Negotiations that would have taken weeks in the old galaxy now concluded in minutes as enhanced human minds process information and reach decisions with unprecedented speed. President Maria Santos materialized as a holographic projection among the trees, her image carrying the enhanced presence that came from connection to the vast network of human consciousness. Elena, we need to discuss the proposal from the Altarian Confederation. Elena accessed the relevant files from the collective memory. The Altarians, one of humanity's traditional allies, had requested permission to undergo genetic modification that would allow them to develop psionic abilities similar to enhanced humans. Madam President, what's the consensus from the collective? Mixed. The preserved minds are divided between those who see sharing our gifts as a path to true galactic unity, and those who believe our abilities are the result of 15,000 years of suffering that cannot be replicated through simple genetic modification. Through the network, Elena felt the debate raging among 30 billion preserved human minds. Some, like the scientists and diplomats who had spent millennia dreaming of peaceful cooperation, supported sharing enhanced abilities with species that had proven themselves trustworthy. Others, particularly the military minds who had observed Council exploitation firsthand, argued that psionic abilities in non-human hands could eventually be turned against humanity once again. What about the children? What's their perspective? Captain Kim and her generation believe the decision should be based on demonstrated commitment to human welfare over an extended period. They want to see at least a generation of genuine cooperation before considering sharing our enhanced abilities. Elena found herself agreeing with the children's perspective. The enhanced abilities that now defined humanity had emerged from 500 generations of suppressed potential finally breaking free. They weren't simply genetic modifications that could be copied. They were the expression of human consciousness itself. Madam President, I recommend we require a 50-year probationary period during which potential candidates demonstrate genuine commitment to human interests before we consider sharing our abilities. Agreed. Elena, there's one more matter. The archaeological teams have found something troubling. New images flowed through the mental network, showing excavations on abandoned council worlds where humanity's preserved ancestors had discovered evidence of previous civilizations that had been enslaved and harvested before humanity ever reached the stars. Dr. Elena Morrison's consciousness, now preserved after her death during a research accident 6 months prior, shared her analysis through the network. Elena, we found evidence of at least 17 species that were subjected to the same conditioning and harvesting protocols before they went extinct. The Council has been doing this for over 100,000 years. The revelation sent a wave of horror through the human collective. The theft of human potential hadn't been an isolated crime. It was the latest iteration of a pattern that had destroyed multiple sapient species throughout galactic history. Dr. Morrison, are there any surviving traces of these lost civilizations in the psionic storage networks? Unknown, but we're detecting energy signatures that don't match human consciousness patterns. It's possible the Council preserved fragments of other harvested species without realizing it. Elena felt the collective weight of 30 billion human minds focusing on this new information. If other enslaved species had been preserved within the psionic networks, their liberation would fundamentally change the nature of galactic civilization. Dr. Morrison, what resources do you need to investigate further? Already coordinating with preserved archaeological and xenobiological specialists from across human history. Elena, if we can liberate the preserved consciousness of other harvested species, we might be able to resurrect civilizations that have been extinct for tens of thousands of years. The implications were staggering. The Council's crimes against humanity might have inadvertently preserved the keys to restoring lost civilizations throughout the galaxy. Species that have been extinct for millennia could return to reclaim their place among the stars. Elena, came Captain Kim's voice, carrying the combined wisdom of enhanced children who saw possibilities that adults might miss. We think we should try. If there are others like us out there, trapped and waiting, don't they deserve freedom too? Elena looked up at the stars visible through the garden's atmospheric dome. A year ago, she had stood in this same place believing that humanity was alone in the universe except for their Council colleagues. Now she understood that the galaxy might be filled with the preserved consciousness of dozens of extinct species, all victims of the same systematic exploitation that had nearly destroyed humanity. Sarah, begin liberation protocols for non-human consciousness signatures. Let's see who else has been waiting for freedom. Already started, Ambassador. And Elena, I think we're going to need a much bigger garden. Elena smiled, feeling the vast network of human consciousness settling into its role as liberator of the galaxy. The Council had sought to steal human potential and had instead awakened something that would reshape the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. The age of human dominance hadn't begun with conquest or expansion. It had begun with the simple recognition that freedom belonged to everyone who had been denied it. As Elena walked through the transformed Memorial Grove, she could feel the presence of 30 billion preserved human minds working alongside the living to create something the galaxy had never seen. A true community of liberated consciousness spanning multiple species and stretching across thousands of years of suppressed potential. The Council had taken 8,000 human children. In response, humanity had liberated every enslaved mind in galactic history. It seemed like a fair exchange.